Vice President for the APA.
Hey, also, I recognize that I'm holding up lunch, so basically I'll give you a quick spiel here, and then I'll stick around for whatever questions you guys want to. Oh, hold on. So I'll give you kind of a quick update with what's going on with us, and then I'll stick around for whatever questions you have, or I got to cut out at about 12:15 or so. So in terms of an update of what's going on, I'm sure everybody's aware that we're in negotiations. We're kind of in the what could possibly be the tail end of our negotiations that have been going on since 2019. COVID took a big chunk out of that. We got back to the table. In reality, it was earlier this year. We made an attempt last year. There was a term that has almost become a four-letter word. It's a targeted approach, where we focused in on really the bigger issues that we were going to have for a short-term contract, 2-year contract in duration. That's still what we're going towards. Of the 26, let me think here, of the 26 sections in the contract, there was 20 that were originally in our 2019 early openers, and of those, 16 of them are currently on the table for this targeted approach. So we've gotten through 21 of the 25 sections that we have. The big things that are holding us up right now, we've got a training problem. We've got a huge training problem. And the company's ability to retain and attract check airmen is a big part of that. So section 12 of the contract, 12B specifically, deals with check airmen. And the company recognizes they need to get that fixed. So we've held that till the end. And the other big issue that we're working on right now, and this should come as no surprises, is the pay issues in section 3. So things like pay, retro, and the overall compensation package. And there's been a bunch of back and forth, and I won't say that we're to a standoff at this point, but there are the company's offer is out on the table, and there are plenty on the board who are not pleased with that. So kind of some back and forth. There was a 24 and 4, in other words, a 20% pay raise on the date of signing, and then it would be a 4% pay raise 1 year after that, a 4% pay raise the year after that. After some back and forth and some sort of shuffling the compensation around, that went to 10, 5, and 5, and that was the APA's position. The company's response to that is a 10, 5, and 3. So in other words, 10% data signing, 5 additional percent 1 year later, and then 3 additional percent a year after that. So it shouldn't come as any surprise that that is. There are many pilots and there's some board members who have considered that unacceptable because depending on where you look at it, it barely meets or may not even meet the inflation metrics since we got our last pay raise. Retro, there's kind of a back and forth on that. True retro should go back to the amenable date of the contract. Right now, the company is offering retro back to January 1st of this year, and in addition to that, they've put a cap on that. The snap up has a 2.5% cap, and that would be a snap up to Delta, United, and the retro. I want to say they put like a 6% cap on that. So there's a lot of limitations to it. The compensation package is not being looked at very favorably right now by APA. In terms of pattern bargaining, as we were approaching getting all these sections done, United Airlines, who tends to keep their information very close hold, I think it's about 2 months ago now, they ended up pushing a tentative agreement out to their pilot group. Pilot group did not like it. At the time, though, before we realized what the pilot group thought of it, that worked on pattern bargaining from us, and it took American Airlines from their pay proposal of a 4% and 3%. I think it was up to an 8 and a 6. There's so many numbers, I forget them. So it raised the bar for American, and at the same time, the pilot groups at United were so dissatisfied, they borderline revolted. They were threatening recall of their equivalent of the board of directors, the MEC. I think they actually did recall a couple MEC members. Helped us out. So most recently, in fact, last Friday, if you haven't heard this, the Alaska pilots got a tentative agreement. We haven't seen any actual language. It's just a bunch of bullet points and an executive summary. Their pay raises are anywhere from 14 to 23%. Because unlike us, first off, they're only narrow body. Back up. It's 14 to 23% because it's applied per years in service. So in other words, an FO who is 2 years in service may have a 14% raise, whereas the FO in 6 years in service might have the 23% raise. That said, all of those, when compared to our current table position for raises, they end up effectively where we are at for pay. But there's a lot of consternation because there's some issues with regards to their pay rules that are, their work rules that are considered pretty significantly, when you look at them at an individual basis, better than what we have. So that came out last Friday. The board called a meeting for today. That's what I got to jet out of here for, where again, we don't have the language, but we're going to compare some issues that we have. We're going to look at what Alaska pilots have been offered, and we're going to see if we can maybe get some improvements in our work rules as we continue to battle it out for the pay. So that's kind of that's the big thing at APA in the building with negotiations. So with that, I'm happy to, if you guys got questions for me, happy to stick around till either you're out of questions or until I hit about quarter after. Yeah.
What's going on with the survey asking pilots if they want to return to Alpha?
Okay, so there's a survey out there, and it's very specifically, there's a survey. Let me back up. Several months back, there was a push from a group of pilots that wanted APA to look into merging with ALPA. And we've tried this a couple times. Anybody who's been around is aware of this. We kind of went about this backwards, which is a resolution was brought forth to create an ALPA exploratory committee. And as that was being worked in the drafting committees, we realized, well, does the pilot group even want this? So then we decided, well, let's send a survey out. Several weeks prior, we had sent out a survey for Section 6. This is the first time we've done web surveys. We've always done telephone polling. The folks, it's University of North Hampshire University of New Hampshire that does this. And they basically use demographics to get a statistical representation. So we switched to the web survey, hoping that we could get enough numbers. And you basically have to get 60% of the pilot group to respond in order for it to be considered accurate. When we did it for Section 6, we actually got just shy of 60%. I think it was like 57. But when you compared the demographics of the pilot group and the demographics of the responses, they were almost identical. So in other words, it was accurate. When you go to, now obviously the entire pilot group has a vested interest in Section 6. When you go to something like ALPA, you can get folks who are very much in support of it, you can get folks who are very much opposed to it, but it's the folks in the middle that maybe you tend to lose. So as of right now, the survey's been open it's been about 3 or 4 weeks. It's scheduled to be open for another week. I believe we have 6,800 responses to it. So we don't even have half the pilot group right now. Now, the results of the survey won't necessarily determine the steps that the board takes forward, but it's going to play a big part in it. And big picture is, theoretically, if there's an overwhelming support for us to look into ALPA, then that resolution will be put forth. We'll get a committee that comes forward to look at the best way to going about doing that. For anybody who's got access to, I think you all should have access to the APA website. The resolution is on there. You can go through and read it. It's kind of a work in progress. Does that answer you?
It does. Basically, who's behind the drive toward a merger with that?
So the question is, who's behind the drive? It's not a single person. It's a group called AA Pilots for ALPA. I've actually talked to several of these guys. I really think they do have the best intentions. I personally don't support the move to ALPA. The reason that they're doing it is several-fold. They feel that the governance structure is better. They feel that their bylaws are better, and the biggest one that is kind of tough to dispute is they feel that they've got access to more resources. Well, the flip side of that is APA outside of Section 6 only charges 1% for dues. ALPA charges 1.85, so it's easy to have access to more resources when you're charging the pilots more money. They do have a larger overall pool, but again, we share that. When I say we, if we were to go under ALPA, we would be sharing that with every single other carrier that's under ALPA.
If I were to have a voice in it, I would simply say that ALPA doesn't have any skin in the game where APA does.
I would 100% agree with that. There's a history to why we became APA, and there's a reason we split off from ALPA. Yeah, in the back.
This is kind of specific, but you said retro pay. Does that apply to people who
That's a good question. That's one I don't know, because if you're talking about the voluntary permanent leave of absence, and don't quote me on this, I believe you're still on the seniority list. So it's possible, but I don't know. I don't know that.
I mean, you said it snaps back to January of this year. I was on the seniority list until April, and my husband will be on it until next year. So that's a good question. Maybe you can email me when you find out.
So the better ones, because unless somebody wants to scribe the notes for me, you can email the negotiating committee. They may not even know it. That may be because, again, we have, I didn't specifically use this term, we have AIPs, agreements in principle, on 21 different, not sections, but provisions within the TA. The pay is not one of them. So I don't even know if that, and we're still arguing over retro, so I don't know if that, I'm sure it's been discussed, but I don't know if there's an answer right now. Yes. All right, who else? I saw more hands. Yeah.
Chris, repeat the question when you
Yeah,
before
sorry
you give
about
the
that.
answer.
You might want to remind everybody that Alpha's got a bounty on it. And usually these movements who go back to Alpha, it's a small group of people. They've been promised really cushy jobs on Alpha. I've seen it 2 times, and I know it for a fact that they were promised.
Yeah, so the comment was basically that Alpa's got a bounty on for us, and the folks that are running these movements might potentially have a job at Alpa. I don't doubt that Alpa wants us. I mean, you know, we're the largest independent union with, you know, right now 14,500 pilots. So you consider all the money that would come over to Alpa, we're a big cash cow.
Hey Chris, is Delta in contract negotiations?
Is Delta in contract negotiations? Yes. In fact, Delta just went to the, hold on, let me misspeak on this. Southwest just went to the NMB. Delta is in negotiations. I want to say that Delta is approaching the NMB as well, the National Mediation Board. But they are in contract, all the major carriers are in contract negotiations right now. Who else? It's an easy crowd. Retirement benefits. Okay, so not all inclusive. One of the bigger ones is let me think of the name here, the RHRA. So effectively, this deals with your sick payout on retirement. Up to 2019, if you had sick time remaining, you got paid out for that. You got paid $25 on the hour. That's nothing. And then after the agreement in 2019 went away, that sick payout. So you have folks who are unaware of this and are carrying 1,000 hours into retirement. They lose all of that. What the RHRA is seeking to do is it pays out, don't quote me on this because there's a lot of numbers in there. It basically, if I recall, it will pay out 50% of your sick time up to, I can't remember if it's $150,000 or $250,000. So the point that we try to make with the company is if you don't pay these pilots their sick time prior to retiring, I was in contract compliance. We made a huge push. If anybody called me up and had a question that was in any way related to retirement, or anybody who flew with me had a question on retirement, the first question I asked them was, how much sick time do you have? And then we talked about there's a provision in the contract that will allow you to use up to 130 hours of sick. And you can take that, you can couple it with an IMAX game, and you can effectively take the last 9 to 12 months of your career off with pay if you do it smartly. And that was an education piece that we started pushing. So what we were trying to get the company to recognize is you can either pay the pilots their sick time at full, or they're going to get it full. And if you pay them out when they retire, you're going to have full productivity all the way up till their 65th birthday. Otherwise, you're going to lose them in the last year, and that's all stuff that you're not accounting for in your calculations. We got them to 50%. You know, if the pilots aren't utilizing that provision and they continue to burn their sick at full time, maybe the company will recognize that next time around. Who else? Might be done early.
They
You're all
know
hungry.
when you're Caribbean, they get to eat.
All right. Thanks all. Happy to make it out here. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. I'm going to jet off and I get to argue with the board now. Thanks, Alan.